Straw Dogs is a 2002 philosophical work with a polemical agenda by John Gray, a British former professor of European thought, now retired at the London School of Economics. It takes vehement issue with modern humanism and beyond that with humanity in general. For Gray, human beings are essentially deluded, violent and doomed. The book's title was inspired by the ancient Taoist practice of dedicating straw dogs to the gods. The dogs were apparently treated with reverence during the ceremony. Afterwards, they were trampled upon. Gray is a passionate defender of James Lovelock's Gaia thesis, the theory that the Earth is a self-regulating mechanism whose behaviour in some ways resembles that of an organism, as he himself puts it, and he states that those who disregard it are likely to end up like those straw dogs. He points out that humanism has ditched the metaphysical baggage of Christianity only to retain its belief in the sanctity of personhood, the long-term inevitability of progress, the reality of natural rights, the moral primacy of humankind, the efficacy of freedom, and the power of reason as exemplified by the scientific method. He thinks that's a gargantuan mistake. Humanity, he believes, is the name of a biological species whose effect on the planet has been consistently detrimental and whose eco-ransacking trajectory looks set to continue. The destruction of the natural world, he writes in Chapter 1, is not the consequence of global capitalism, industrialisation, Western civilization, or any flaw in human institutions. It's a consequence of the evolutionary success of an exceptionally rapacious primate. Throughout all of history and prehistory, human advance has always coincided with ecological devastation. Nevertheless, there are grounds for optimism of a kind. Earth's self-regulating mechanisms mean that sooner or later huge numbers of humans will die off, either through plague or war or self-inflicted climate transformation, after which the planet's ecological balance will be restored. The closest Gray comes to a definition of human nature occurs in Chapter 3. Humans are weapon-making animals with an unquenchable fondness for killing, he tells us. Genocide, war and slavery aren't, he thinks, anomalous detours in human history. They're what humans have always done, what they often enjoy doing, and to some extent what we, excel at. The book ends with a look at transhumanism, the idea that humans might be able to overcome their biological limitations with, for example, AI, brain augmentation or genetic modification. Just over 2 years ago, I myself examined this question in a novel I'd written entitled Humankind 2.0, which features a billionaire who's been explicitly inspired by the thought of John Gray. I was cautiously optimistic, but Gray isn't. Plausibly, he thinks the right tools will probably fall into the wrong hands. While Straw Dogs isn't a cheerful read, a lot of it feels hard to dispute. There are, of course, weaknesses. Firstly, the problem with insisting that humans are animals is that while obviously true, it's also question-begging. Animals is a human category, and it's not a very useful one here unless you think that amoeba, centipedes, starlings, dolphins and lizards all have something in common that can be mapped onto us. If you do, what is it? Descartes' 17th century view that they're all more or less machines doesn't get you anywhere at all. Darwin might be a bit of help, but he'd definitely leave you needing more. What if at least some animals know things about the universe that we don't or can't? What if in a few subtle ways they're superior to us? It's a question that's to some extent consonant with the concerns of Straw Dogs. In its first part, Gray criticises humanism's faith in science as just another fetish. To think of science as a search for truth is to renew a mystical faith, he says, and he examines the work of Galileo, Kepler and Newton as a way of showing that it's the unorthodox outliers rather than those conforming to a rationalist definition of what makes a good scientist who often make the biggest scientific advances. Not only the origins but also the progress of science often comes from acting against reason, he concludes. One apparent problem with that sort of science skepticism is that it opens the door to those who would reject the meticulous research to the effect that we're responsible for climate change and for the destruction of the Earth's biodiversity. But Gray would have an answer to that. He'd say it's irrelevant. He'd say Straw Dogs wasn't written in the hope that humans would change their behaviour. They won't. Stupid responses to an impending catastrophe are part of what makes humans human. To return to the question of what animals are or might be, Once we've weakened the rigid distinction between good and bad science, it might be worth considering the work of Rupert Sheldrake. Of all the current practitioners of so-called pseudoscience, Sheldrake comes closest to being respectable. He's been a biochemist at Cambridge University, a Frank Knox Scholar at Harvard, and he's conducted research for the Royal Society. He fully shares Gray's views on the pretensions of mainstream science, but he also has things to say about animal cognition that might just, for someone convinced by Gray's worldview, mitigate its bleakness.